Hello, it's John Heaton, and today, as next week we would be marking the 80th birthday of John Lennon, I just thought I'd do a video on imagining what he would have done had he lived, a little bit of that, going through some of his collection, pointing out a few bits worth looking for if you're looking to get Lennon records second-hand, and then also I had a go at trying to identify the names on the Imagine inner sleeve, you know, that circular picture, and I started doing it and then I realised that the names were actually included in the Imagine CD recent edition, so I didn't have to scrabble around trying to look for the names I didn't recognise, but I'll come to that. So yeah, so it's going to be 40 years this December when we lost John, and next Friday would have marked his 80th birthday. So he would have been double the age he was when he died, which is quite a sobering thought. And we all know Ringo's just turned 80, so we have one Beatle who has just turned 80. Paul will turn 80 in 2022, and George obviously will not, because he passed away age 58. So I'm just thinking, even if he'd only released an album every 5 years, say until he was 60, which is like a worst case scenario, I think, we would have had 4 or 5 albums from him post 1980. So we look at the other Beatles. Paul has released 12 studio albums post December 80, starting with Tug of War and culminating with Egypt Station. Ringo's released 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think, studio albums. Now George has only released 3, plus 2 Wilburys albums, plus the posthumous Brainwashed. So maybe John would have followed, you know, what George did and took it easy. He may have taken it easy after a few years, but in the early 80s it was raring to go. He was always already halfway through the Milk and Honey album, and had plans for the third, although they were joint efforts, of course, so we didn't get a whole album of John. But I think he would have been very productive in the early 80s, and he would have toured, I think, in 81, and who knows after that. I think we would have had some interesting stuff. I dare say that we might not have had 5-star albums the whole time, as inevitably is the case when an artist grows older. He can't quite maintain the standard, and we've seen that with Paul to a greater or lesser extent with some of the albums. We've certainly seen it with Ringo, but you know, I think there would have been some good stuff. I'm sure there would have been, and we were robbed, that's for sure, and it still saddens me deeply to this day that he was not able to do what he wanted to do. So as a result, all we've got are the few albums he put out mainly in the early 70s, and then Double Fancy in 80. We've got an endless string of compilation albums, and there's another one coming out on his birthday called Give Me Some Truth. So I guess the anthology was the most successful compilation album, if you want to call it that, because it had unreleased material. Probably wouldn't have seen the light of day had John lived, or maybe not, one can never tell. The New York City concert still hasn't seen the light of day on proper remastered DVD. I think there was a VHS copy of it available for a while in the 80s, but needs to be remastered. So that's a bit of a mystery. We've just seen Fred Seaman being sued by Yoko for doing an interview the other day. I watched it. If it was the interview on YouTube where he's just on Zoom chatting to a YouTube channel like my own, then it had less than 400 views, so I don't think he was going to make much money from it. And he bit his tongue in this interview, and he wasn't slagging off Yoko or anything. It was relatively interesting. But I take everything he said with a pinch of salt, because he's economical with the truth and he doesn't have a quite good grasp of the facts. He referred to the fact that John and Paul didn't get on by listing a whole lot of stuff which went on, which one he could have read in textbooks and went on way before he was working for John, such as, you know, Paul putting out his solo album and Brian Epstein dying, and he said in 67 or 68. And then he said John hadn't seen George since 72, which is obviously not true because he saw him in 74, and Derek Taylor and George visited the Dakota in 76, as is in the Hunter Davis edited Lennon letters. You can read it. So, you know, what I'm disappointed with Fred Seaman. Certainly Sean Lennon said, "You were the closest of the family, you betrayed us, and really this will be the best book I ever burn," was his quote to Fred when they met outside the courtroom in 2002. So just wanted to show you a few things about the Lennon records I have, and if you're looking to pick up a second-hand copy of Plastic Ono Band, then make sure you have the lyrics on the inner sleeve. This is a US copy where they include the F word on Working Class Hero. If you have the UK copy with the lyrics, that word is asterisked out, and it says at the insistence of EMI at the bottom of the sheet. I don't have a UK copy with that. I would like to get hold of one. And moving on to the Imagine album, 2 postcards included. The oh crumbs. The one where he's grappling with the pig, and also this one, which I don't, well, it wasn't in my original copy. You tell me, guys out there who bought the album at the time, was this postcard included in the original? I know it's in the new vinyl, but I just can't, well, I bought what I thought was a new copy in the late 70s, so which probably wasn't the first edition, so maybe it was only in the first edition and got taken out after that. So then we've got the Imagine album, and this is the inner sleeve I was talking about, where it was great. I love the typeface on this and the way they've got the lyrics going round and round like a record, and on here all the details of who plays on which track, and then this thing of 40 photos around the edge. So what I did is I drew a circle and started off with John at number 1 at the top, going clockwise round to 40, and before I cheated and looked it up, I tried to see how many I could identify on my own, and I think I got to something like 13, which is a bit disappointing, but there are a lot of obscure faces on here, and even when I cheated and looked it up, I wouldn't have known some of these people, but it's interesting, I think. So apart from John Lennon and Phil Spector, we got Steve Brendel, who played the upright bass on Crippled Inside. This is going clockwise. Dan Richter, not sure who he is. I think he's something to do with the music company. Then we got Eddie Klein, engineer, King Curtis, the sax player, John Barham, who played piano and harmonium on the album, Alan Klein, the manager, of course. Then we got this obscure figure, Reverend T.J. Bauer, no idea who he is, or Boa. Shelley Yakus, engineer, Eddie Veal, engineer, Roy Citzala or Kikala, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, engineer, worked with John in the 70s a lot. Joe Marzini, I'm not sure who he is, tried to look him up. Les Anthony, who's John's chauffeur, who apparently John let go of when he came to New York in 71, and they were on good terms, and he says, "You've been very good to me over the years." And then 12 months later, Les Anthony was in News of the World saying it took the Beatles about 3 weeks to split up, and that was the 3 weeks between when Yoko bumped into John and when she lured him into bed. So I think he almost got sued for that. Apart from anything else, John bumped into Yoko in November 66, and I don't think they slept with each other until that Two Virgins night of May of 68, which was obviously longer than 3 weeks, but anyway. Then we got Professor J. H. Curzon-Nabe, who's some kind of 19th century composer. I'm not sure what the connection with him and John is. Dan Richter, personal assistant to John and Yoko, who took the front cover of this album. Jim Gordon, the drummer. By the way, on the internet there were a few people trying to guess who these people were, and this is how misinformation spreads, because there was disagreement as to whether it was Jim Gordon or whether it was Derek Taylor for that particular picture. And Robert Louis Stevenson's name came out, Lewis Carroll's name came up, who were not on the pictures at all. Allen Ginsberg's name came up. So I'm glad Yoko set the record straight when she put out the Imagine CD, because she tells exactly who was in here. Jack Douglas, an engineer on this album. Interesting to see a young Jack Douglas. Reverend J.M. Runke, not sure who he is. Richard Apuzzo, not sure who he is. Tom Evans from Badfinger. Al Steckler, creative director at Apple. Klaus Voormann, bass player. George Harrison, who played the guitar on a few tracks. Paul Prestopino, who's a guitarist, but I don't think he's on the album. But I think John must have had a high regard for him or something. Mal Evans provided this and that on this album. Phil McDonald, the engineer. Nicky Hopkins. Doesn't really look like Nicky Hopkins in the picture. Looks a bit more like Roger Daltrey to me. But anyway, that's the one with just the bottom half of the face. 3/4 of the way around the clock is Nicky Hopkins. Phil Spector, Alan White, drummer, Diana Robertson, who provided the food. Vile and Diana are credited as food on here. And so we got Diana Robertson, Joe Molland from Badfinger, Val Wild, again, who provided the food with Diana. Arlene Rexon, who was a receptionist at Record Plant in the US. Rod Linton, who provided acoustic guitar. By the way, Andy Davis also provided acoustic guitar. Andy Davis went on to form the Corgis with James Warren in the late 70s, and that's the same Andy Davis playing acoustic guitar on a couple of tracks. Ted Turner played guitar on Crippled Inside. Then we got Yoko and Harry Ritz, who was a comedian. So I thought it was quite a lot of fun trying to identify that, and as I say, Yoko puts an end to all discussion by listing the names here. It's a bit confusing because this doesn't start with John at the top, even though on the record it does. So John should have been at the top here, but so you have to kind of start from John Barham, who's kind of 10 past on the original album clockwise. But anyway, it's great that she's put the record straight. So put an end to the discussion of Robert Louis Stevenson being on there or whoever. So what else have we got to show you? The Sometime New York City. Oh no, also showed you that postcard. And then Sometime New York City. This is quite a rare cardboard sleeve US copy, not in brilliant nick, but what was good about this is it had the inner sleeve. Look out for this inner sleeve, which was not in the later issues. It's an advert about joining the army, and has "Fit to Die" written across the front. So I'm not sure why that was missed off the later pressings, but I think it's if you're looking for a second-hand copy, it's on the new copy, by the way. But so it's on this new vinyl, which is my son's copy, which also has this postcard, which was not in my original copy. The Statue of Liberty with the clenched fist. So, those were revolutionary times in '72, and John was in the thick of it. So then I picked up this. So this is the normal sleeve for Shaved Fish. This is my new vinyl copy. Nice to have that on new vinyl. Yoko didn't have to put that out, because some say it's been superseded by subsequent compilations, but I think artwork-wise, this is way superior to any other compilation by virtually anyone. I think it's brilliant. I think it was Roy Kohara who did the design for this. The same guy who did the design for Walls and Bridges, which was a creditable effort, but also the same guy who did the terrible packaging for the Rock and Roll Beatles album in '76. So when he was good, but not on that occasion. And then anyway, I picked up this Yugoslav rare copy the other day with the censored cover. So I remember my copy of Wings Greatest. My Eastern European copy was missing Live and Let Die. Just the track was deleted from the album, and the picture of Live and Let Die was blacked out, and the name of the track. Here, the song is on the album, but the picture of the naked woman with the missiles has been censored here. So I thought that was, I've never seen it before, and I've been a fan for years and years and years. Never seen that Yugoslav edition, and as with all Yugoslav editions, a really nice dark green apple, considerably darker than the UK, US apples, Canadian. So that was it. That was really, I was really happy to pick that up. So I'll be listening to the Give Me Some Truth compilation when it comes out on Friday, but I doubt I'm going to fork out for it. Did hear the new mix of Mind Games and Instant Karma, which are already out there. They're pretty good. Wouldn't mind hearing the original US mix of Instant Karma, because I understand the single over there was mixed differently, and I'm not sure whether the new version is an amalgamation of the two or just an updated version in general. But they should put out the US version of that single officially. So I don't think it's, correct me if I'm wrong anyone, but I don't think it's available officially. So that was it. It's going to be a celebration of John's life on Friday, but then as we move into November and December, we're going to come up to that horrible time of year when we know what it leads to with December the 8th. So that's going to be a tragic anniversary. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.